So it's December 31st, 2025. And while, you might be thinking about New Year's Eve plans, across the globe, the major strategic players are anything but paused.
Not at all. In fact, what we're seeing, and this is across all the sources we've pulled for this deep dive from Reuters to TASS, is a really calculated intensification of positioning.
That's the word, isn't it? Calculated.
It is. We're watching three huge consequential moves that are basically locking in the strategic geometry for 2026.
And what are those three?
First, extreme volatility coming back to the Taiwan Strait. Second, a very clear acceleration of economic decoupling. And third, and this might be the biggest one, a fundamental recalibration of global influence through the newly expanded BRICS plus bloc.
And we're not just talking about, routine diplomatic shifts here. These are specific actions.
Exactly.
We've got sources detailing the largest ever U.S. arms sale to Taipei, which then becomes the catalyst for this huge PLA response, a simulated blockade.
A blockade that pushed tensions to a point we haven't seen in years. And at the same time, you have the BRICS bloc completing this historic expansion.
Right into a 10-nation powerhouse. And they're already, according to Al Jazeera and the Financial Times, drafting a new financial architecture.
So our mission today is really to cut through all that noise. We need to understand not just what's happening, but how these three things, the military moves, the economic separation, and the financial restructuring, are all connected.
Because these shifts, even if they seem remote, they directly impact everything. Market stability, international trade.
The basic rules of engagement for every country. This is crucial knowledge for navigating the year ahead.
Okay, let's unpack this. And let's start where the tensions are highest, the Indo-Pacific.
We should probably focus on the catalysts first.
Okay. For months, the status quo has been fragile, but the sources all seem to agree that this new pattern of volatility, it really kicked off right after the U.S. announced that huge $11 billion defense package for Taipei.
It did. And the Chinese Ministry of National Defense was very, very clear. They framed their exercises as a necessary response.
A response to what they called external interference.
Right. And the specific catalyst they pointed to was the December 18th announcement, the one detailing the massive transfers of HIMARS and ATACMS missile systems to Taiwan.
HIMARS and ATACMS mess. These acronyms keep popping up in every major conflict analysis. For anyone just catching up, what exactly do these systems bring to the table that changes the entire regional dynamic?
It's really all about strategic depth and preventing early mobilization.
Okay.
HIMARS and ATACMS are these highly mobile, long-range precision rocket systems. The Institute for the Study of War highlights that they give Taiwan a new kind of a long-reach strike capability.
Long-reach meaning?
Meaning they can be moved constantly, so they're hard to target. But their range means that Taipei now has the ability to potentially strike mainland staging areas. We're talking ports, airfields, troop mobilization centers.
Before an invasion force can even assemble.
Before it can even get going. So it's not just a defensive system sitting on the coastline.
It's a counterstrike capability. It fundamentally threatens China's ability to successfully launch a full-scale operation.
Precisely. And in Beijing's view, that's an unacceptable shift in the balance.
And their military response was just as sharp, the simulated blockade.
Right. According to Reuters, that whole exercise was designed to test the limits of the status quo, to practice cutting off key sea lanes, testing command and control, and logistics for a sustained isolation of the island.
So you have this massive military demonstration, but the sources also point to a second front, a more subtle one, the information war.
Absolutely. While the ships are sailing, Beijing is running this really sophisticated strategic campaign. The Associated Press noted how they're trying to undermine confidence, framing the new U.S. arms as outdated, even as they're arriving.
So they're flooding social media with claims that these missiles are relics.
Exactly, that they won't deter a modern PLA.
But hold on, if the PLA is so confident these arms are outdated, why risk an internationally condemned blockade? I mean, doesn't that just escalate things and validate the U.S. intervention?
That's a sharp challenge to their narrative, isn't it? The risk is high, but the goal here is likely psychological.
Aimed at who?
Primarily at the Taiwanese public. If they can convince the people receiving the weapons that the hardware is irrelevant before it's even deployed, well, they win a huge psychological victory. They erode faith in the alliance, hoping to cause instability inside Taiwan, which is always cheaper than a hot war.
That makes sense. It's a two-pronged attack, military posturing and psychological ops. Okay, let's pivot. Because when the military option gets too risky, Economic leverage becomes the weapon of choice. And this is where that tension in the Strait connects directly to the slow burn of strategic decoupling.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because we're moving from immediate crisis management to, well, to a structural long-term economic war.
Where major powers are trying to keep things commercially stable day to day, but at the same time, they're separating their key tech sectors.
It's a very fine line to walk.
We saw that brief pause, right? The Trump-Xi meeting resulted in a temporary hold on new tariffs, which suggested some stability.
It did, but that stability is fragile. And the U.S. strategy seems highly nuanced. It's not a complete economic divorce.
No, it's more like targeted surgery.
That's a perfect way to put it. You can see the strategy pretty clearly.
Yeah.
The U.S. is allowing some specific current-gen semiconductor exports to keep flowing. Things like the NVIDIA H200 chips.
Okay, so why do that?
It keeps market stability high, and it maintains U.S. company revenue, but at the exact same time.
They're tightening the screws on the really cutting-edge stuff. We're talking early-stage quantum computing, specific AI design, next-gen lithography.
That is the textbook definition of strategic decoupling in slow motion. It's like a targeted diet versus just crash fasting. You allow the calories that keep the body functioning now, the H200s, but you strictly cut off anything that could fuel future military and tech supremacy.
And the goal is just to slow down their future growth without crashing the whole market right now.
Exactly.
So this brings up a huge question. Can internal investment, no matter how much money they throw at it, truly counteract this kind of targeted pressure? How is Beijing actually reacting?
Their reaction is to just massively accelerate their silicon shield alternatives. They are pouring hundreds of billions into domestic fabrication, specifically targeting advanced lithography tools.
The machines that actually etch the
It's
microchip.
the very same.
Yeah.
They want total self-sufficiency to make those U.S. controls irrelevant in the long run. The problem is, lithography is arguably the most complex manufacturing challenge in the world. It takes decades to perfect.
And they're trying to do it in just a few years.
They are. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, you see Russia making very similar moves to decouple from Western finance.
Right, this is where the economic hardening spreads across Eurasia.
Yes. TRS is reporting that Moscow is effectively building a permanent sanction-proof corridor. And they're doing it by integrating their infrastructure. Their satellite navigation links up with China's Beidou, their energy grids and financial systems integrate with Beijing and New Delhi.
So this isn't just temporary belt-tightening, this is a permanent restructure. They're making sure their key economic flows, especially oil and arms, can function completely outside the Western financial system.
Guaranteeing resilience no matter what. It shows that strategic autonomy isn't just a buzzword, it's a massive infrastructure project.
Which brings us perfectly to the third great shift for 2026, the BRICS plus expansion. This push for autonomy in Moscow and Beijing isn't just defensive, it's funding the creation of this massive alternative system.
In this expansion, it's a fundamental global recalibration. BRICS has become a 10-nation powerhouse. Its collective weight is now comparable to the entire G7.
And the bloc is taking real, concrete steps. This isn't just talk anymore.
No, what's fascinating here is the how. The Financial Times reported on a specific material step. The BRICS New Development Bank is preparing its first Indian rupee-denominated bond.
Okay, de-dollarization is a term that gets thrown around a lot, often sensationalized. For you, the listener, what does a rupee-denominated bond actually mean for global trade?
Well, it doesn't mean the dollar is dead tomorrow, but it does mean that viable alternatives now exist.
So traditionally, if India buys Russian oil, that transaction has to be in U.S. dollars.
Correct, which means both countries have to hold large dollar reserves and use the Western-controlled SWIFT system. A rupee-denominated bond lets BRICS members lend, trade, and settle huge commodity purchases using their own currencies.
Which means those transactions never even touch the dollar system.
They don't. And that significantly reduces their vulnerability to Western sanctions or financial pressure. You're effectively removing the U.S. financial system as the mandatory middleman for a huge chunk of global trade.
And the leadership is shifting too. India just took the BRICS presidency for 2026.
That's right, with Prime Minister Modi proposing a humanity-first model of governance, which is this balancing act between India's ties to the West and its new leadership role in the global South.
And strategically, the new members changed the bloc's power profile, not just financially, but geographically.
The geography is critical. The inclusion of new members like Indonesia and Iran gives BRICS just unprecedented control over the world's most vital maritime choke points.
Unprecedented. How so?
Well, think about it. Iran dominates the Strait of Hormuz. That's where the Persian Gulf's oil and gas flows through. Indonesia sits right on the Malacca Strait, one of the world's busiest shipping lanes.
That is enormous leverage. So BRICS can now exert influence not just over production, but over the physical flow of global commodities.
And if you synthesize all this, what you see is that the Global South isn't just a term for developing nations anymore. It is now a unified, powerful bloc that can dictate terms in trade negotiations. It's the clearest challenge yet to the unipolarity that has defined the world for the last 30 years.
So what does this all mean for you, trying to navigate 2026? We've got military testing in the Pacific, strategic decoupling, and this powerful new financial bloc. The outlook seems to be a world of managed volatility.
Managed volatility and competing doctrines. We're seeing major powers compete not just country to country, but model to model. Foreign policy highlights this emerging clash between the Donroe Doctrine and Chinese interests in Latin America.
The Donroe Doctrine, that's a strong name. How is that different from past U.S. policy in the region?
It's a modern spin on the old Monroe Doctrine, but focused intensely on economics and supply chain security. The goal is economic sovereignty for the Western Hemisphere. Washington is pushing hard for reshoring critical industries and using capital controls to prevent non-allied powers from gaining too much leverage in its backyard.
And this clashes directly with Chinese investments, like the Belt and Road Initiative, especially in a place like Panama.
Absolutely. When China invests billions in ports near the Panama Canal, and the U.S. responds with incentives to move manufacturing to Central America, that's the Donroe Doctrine clashing directly with Belt and Road. It's a competition for influence on every continent.
So the fundamental shift, the thing that really summarizes everything we've talked about, is that the era of these grand, unbreakable alliances seems to be replaced by what our sources are calling strategic autonomy.
That is the anchor point for 2026. Nations like India, Brazil, Turkey. They're positioning themselves to move fluidly between blocs based purely on their own national interests.
They aren't aligning permanently with Washington or Beijing.
No, they're transacting with whoever offers the best terms at any given moment. It's no longer about siding with one superpower. It's about maximizing your own negotiating leverage in this new multipolar world. The key focus for 2026 isn't who makes the most friends, but who remains the most resilient.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to mull over. Based on everything we've seen, the decoupling, the military shifts, the rise of these autonomous power blocks, the question for you is this.
As the architects of this new multipolar order make their next moves, what happens to global stability when national interest consistently, and I mean consistently, outweighs established alliance commitments? That is the real uncertainty defining the world of 2026.